Salute, folks. In the theme of January, even though I don't believe in themes or times of month or times of the year to start things like this, you're ready when you're ready and stick to it when you start. However, this is diet, nutrition, fitness and exercise for people of faith and believers. In this little season, the devil has really complicated things for us. And he's basically hijacked our God-given survival instincts against us with all this abundance of quite delicious processed food. And he's made exercise extremely difficult and confusing for people who want to invest the time to do it. This is basically one of my big-time specialties, especially nutrition. I was going to base my channel on it when I first started it. However, yes, let's get started. Let's keep our expectations modest and not bite off more than we can chew. I'll try my best to make this as straight to the point as possible. Come on. The Father, Jesus, and Holy Spirit clan with Dan. First off, if you are underweight and malnourished, ensure that you're getting adequate protein. I know I said that chicken is high in microplastics in the other video, which is, like I said, Satan makes all this stuff so confusing.
The devil himself. This guy was a real jerk.
But yes, a couple times a week you can have chicken. You can focus on eggs if you can digest and tolerate them properly. Beef is my favorite. And if you want to add calories as easily as possible, pour olive oil on everything and drink good quality fruit juice with every meal. That'll get your calories up in a hurry. There are some people that followed the wrong protocols and got, unfortunately, underweight, but I won't spend too much time on that. I said my piece on that. For cutting, and an interesting note before I talk about cutting, which means losing weight, getting rid of visceral fat and the subcutaneous fat in the bad areas. Visceral fat in this little season isn't even taught in medical school. If you don't believe me, look it up. But in the standard medical school, to become an MD protocol, they do not cover visceral fat. Some doctors will actually look at scans and see that people have a custard filling inside them and be like, what is that? that is sad. But yes, visceral fat is the real thing, and it's the most dangerous fat. Hence why the devil is hiding it from our medical trained professionals. Anyhow, for cutting, you want to focus on protein as much as possible. The more protein, the better. Choose lean meats, and there's light cheeses. And if you have processed meats like deli meat, have some vitamin C with it. That'll neutralize the toxic nitrites and actually help convert some of it into nitric oxide, which is a beneficial compound that can actually help with visceral fat reduction too. If you're cutting, the protein is key, and you want to watch your carbs. You don't have to go low carb, you don't have to go low fat, but just keep an eye on those two macros. Keep those in check and make sure protein is always highest priority. And the more you learn your body and how your body feels, the more, like a pregnant woman, the more you'll know what you require. Like when I was doing really high protein, I like my meat salted, so I was eating a lot of meat, and just one day I was just craving fruit, especially watermelon. I went out and bought a couple watermelons, almost ate them all. I was probably lacking some potassium or something like that. And speaking of which, fruit and meat is a very ideal diet. If you have sensitivities to things, meat and fruit are basically the lowest risk of allergens. Like dairy can cause a lot of allergens, eggs can cause a lot of people trouble, fruits and vegetables too, vegetables. But fruits in particular are normally very neutral. Like me, for example, for some reason I don't do well with pineapple. It makes me itchy. But for the most part, for most people, most fruits will be fine. because fruits want to be eaten. They want to be eaten. The Almighty Father designed them to be eaten by mammals, including his favorite mammal, the mammal above all mammals, us. And bread was designed for us to eat too by the Most High God, but unfortunately, the good old devil, you know him.
I mean, this guy was a real jerk.
He messed it all up, and now it's GMO and hybridized and extremely high in pesticides, and it's just not the same bread. If you haven't been specifically diagnosed with gluten intolerance, I would try sourdough. I still avoid all gluten like the plague, but if you still want to enjoy your bread, try sourdough. Good quality baked sourdough bread you might have less of an issue with, because I'm sure all the ancient grains were fermented in sourdough bread anyhow. So eating bread baked in a more traditional fashion will definitely help you digest it better than standard wheat products. But if you do notice an intolerance to standard wheat products too, that may be something worth trying. The big trend right now is everybody's talking about how seed oils are extremely toxic. And yes, for the most part, they are. Unfortunately, it's because even olive oil is a seed oil. And olive oil is mentioned many times in the Bible. And it's a beneficial oil, but unfortunately, almost 90% of it on the market right now is rancid, and like it arrives in stores in the bottles already rancid and oxidized. So with olive oil, sometimes you got to pay for quality. You might, if you're worried about that, you might want to get some of the more high-end olive oil. Olive oil should have a fresh smell and kind of burn your tongue a little bit when you taste it. The problem is they're using, when they mass produce it, they're using big olives, and quality non-oxidized olive oil should be made of smaller batch, smaller olives. And so yes, the seed oil craze is justifiable because they're extremely high in calories. They're extremely high in omega-6. They're very inflammatory. They have no nutritional value. Like if you're going to eat some raw pumpkin seeds, that's great. That's a good seed oil in its unbastardized form. Because even nuts are technically seeds. I'm a fan of pumpkin seeds and walnuts, and you obviously want to consume them. Buy them as fresh as possible and consume them as quickly as possible, because that's the main problem with the seed oils, besides the high omega-6 content and some of the chemicals used in the processing, like hexane, is that they're already bad, they're already rancid, and that just, it's literally like gunking up your body. It's terrible. Your gut and your heart, basically all your organs, will not be happy. And on that note, some people feel they really, really, really have to eat like an extreme variety of foods to get all their nutrients. Problem with that is to incorporate all this wide variety of foods from around the world into your diet. You'd have to consume a massive amount of calories. So if it's variety versus keeping your calories in check, keeping your calories in check and staying lean is way more important. If you're trying to cut calories and that 360 calories of olive oil is in your diet and keeping you well over your calorie limit, that's an easy fix right there. Get rid of the olive oil. That's just an example. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of us can get away quite well with mostly meat and fruit and avoid the dirty dozen fruits. Buy them organic whenever possible, or just don't eat the dirty dozens if you don't buy them organic. It's literally more poisonous than beneficial, in my opinion. But yes, for grains, if you can digest grains, kamut and spelt, you can get those noodles, kamut noodles and spelt noodles and flours at most grocery stores. Be careful with them though. They're really high in calorie. They're easy. Pasta's easy to overeat. Same with rice. Rice is a really neutral food. Most people can digest it just fine. The arsenic content of it being dangerous is far is very overestimated and overemphasized. It's far less dangerous than some influencers would have you believe. It's very, very, very trace amounts. But rice will fatten you up. Why do you think sumo wrestlers eat rice? So be careful with rice. It's extremely calorie dense, especially if you get it at a restaurant, because they're putting oil on it too, guaranteed. Seed oil. With calories, it's easy. Just think of if you buy some stuff online, and then you go to the grocery store and you might stop for some gas and a knick-knack here and there, and then you come home and you're checking your account, you're like, whoa, look at all this money I spent. You weren't really tallying it up at the time, and that works for calories. Don't graze or snack. Rest. Let your body rest between meals. You can call it a little mini fast, but 2 to 3 meals a day without any snacking in between is more than sufficient, and focus on protein for those 3 meals. And then let your insulin do what it's got to do and let it clear out by itself before the next meal. In regards to supplements, I've basically tried them all. I've been a supplement fool over the years, and the more you learn about the stuff, the more you don't know. The more you know, the more you don't know. Like recently the supplement NMN was very popular for anti-aging and energy production, and come to find out now that NMN takes a lot of methyl donors from your body, takes a lot of methylation out of your body. So it's best, if you're taking that, to take it with TMG, trimethylglycine, which is a methyl donor. And there's so many other processes that we don't know about. I like TMG. That's a great supplement, probably better than NMN. You can just take vitamin B3, or make sure you get enough tryptophan in your diet for that. But the more you know, the less you know. And I've tried them all, and honestly, and I'm not gonna, I still take a ridiculous amount, but they're not necessary. They're really not as necessary as you think. The bare essentials, I'd say, would be a multivitamin, a good multivitamin capsule from a good reputable company. Like here in Canada, the Sisu would be a good reputable company. For omega-3, maybe 1 krill oil capsule a day. That's a lot less likely to be oxidized and a lot better absorbed. And if you're feeling spunky, you can get some good quality probiotics. The more strains, the better. And obviously get them refrigerated. And vitamin D during the winter time. Hopefully your multivitamin has enough vitamin K2, and there's no real need, because a lot of those vitamins are synthetic anyhow, but they do cover the bases. So the devil's really gotten us, man. Ugh.
I mean, this guy was a real jerk.
We're darned if we do, and we're darned if we don't. I'm a big fan, actually, of the blood type diet. I've been doing that quite to par for many years now, like almost 20, until I removed the years where I was a drunk. But the blood type diet, and the one thing I'll give it credit for, is almost all in all, some exceptions with seafood, that the forbidden foods in the Bible are gone by default. They're not they should be avoided by default in that diet, which I found pretty cool. It's not necessary, but if you know your blood type, it could be something to look into. It's ddadamo.com, and he's got all his resources and food values there. And to the forbidden foods, that's absolutely the Most High God's dietary guidelines are extremely important in my book. I don't know when swine was allowed for believers again. Like shrimp, crabs, any insects of the ocean, catfish, eat fish with scales, and good healthy animals. And the nations that eat the most forbidden foods are the ones that are furthest from being believers. Like the current residents of like northeastern Russia and China. I know it could have been a lot different about 700 years ago, but the current residents there, they like their horse meat and all kinds of abominable meat. Like, how could we forget the bat and the turtle soup or whatever? That thing. I don't think that's what... Anyways, that's not But still, it's not healthy, regardless. But yes, the Most High God's dietary guidelines, and other than that, he just, like, there's obviously documentation of eating bread, hence I mentioned the sourdough, and fish in scripture, and wine, and olive oil, and of course lamb. I think my mouth just watered when I said lamb. That's a very beneficial meat in my opinion. I heard they get a lot of jabs, but what can you do? Like, what can you do? But other than that, the Most High basically just told us, like, not to be gluttonous, but ask that he bless our food and that we be thankful for our food and not stuff our face. Because another example of a nation that doesn't really follow an ideal diet would be India. And they have a huge problem with insulin resistance there, especially in southern India, I think. The majority of the men are like skinny fat. You ever notice that? They got that pot belly and the skinny little arms with no shoulders. Basically the opposite look of what any man would want. And they don't eat enough protein. They eat a lot of rice without protein, and they have a lot of vegetable oil. Rice and vegetable oil. And they have that visceral fat, pot belly, insulin resistance look. Thank goodness they at least have some spices like hot peppers and turmeric, because that might at least offset a tiny bit of the damage, but definitely not all. And yes, since I'm on that, spices are great. Ceylon cinnamon, paprika, turmeric, ginger. I'll emphasize it again. Protein, protein, protein with every meal.
Protein is bad for you if you get more than 15% of your calories from protein. That's not good for your health.
And stay away from any fat loss medications. They're going to cause a lot more harm than good. They're going to catabolize a lot of your muscle mass. And as I'm going to get to shortly, you want to preserve as much muscle mass as possible when getting lean and staying lean. Something I forgot to mention in the last video about the chemicals and stuff. I used to always rinse my plates, drive my Bubba and my mom crazy. I would rinse my plates before I used them, and it turns out I'm vindicated because there's some research that there is a lot of residue left over from dishwashers, and they recommend that you rinse your plates. I was 20 years ahead of you guys. And when it comes to diet and fitness, never bite off more than you can chew. Make sure that it's sustainable and you can do it for the long term. You've seen it just as many times as I have, if not more. People that get really motivated and really dive into it, and they want to work out this many days a week and track their calories this much and only eat these foods, and it's not sustainable. Life happens, SHIT happens, and it's not sustainable. Do things that are sustainable, that you know you can do for the long haul. If you see that your minimalistic approach, that you've been able to do it for a long period of time, then maybe add a few more healthy things here and there. Healthy things that doesn't necessarily mean you add. That can mean eliminate stuff too. But don't overburden yourself. This is a marathon, not a sprint, even though sprinting is healthier than marathon running, especially for visceral fat. I'll get to that in a sec. And speaking of medications too, I almost think this hormone therapy and testosterone replacement therapy is like an agenda, because first of all, TRT, that means testosterone replacement therapy, does increase visceral fat. And if you've seen any guys like between 40 and 50, just think of Joe Rogan or the wrestler Randy Orton, what he looks like now. They have this bloated face and a big gut, and they're always red. Same with that JP guy or whatever, JP Spears. He used to be really funny when he was just like natural, and he just looked like a natural person. But now that he's got like this roided out red face with veins popping out of his neck, he's not quite as funny anymore. I'd say Carrot Top, but he was never funny. Not to mention that TRT makes you infertile. And once you're on it for a long period of time, unless you go on a whole other thing called PCT for a long period of time, you're basically dependent on it for life. And what if something hits the fan and we can't get our stuff anymore? You're going to have people in testosterone withdrawal and losing all their muscle and crying. And yes, God does say that alcohol is okay, but that's basically just a little tiny glass of red wine. I abused my privilege, and I'm not allowed to have it anymore. When I drink wine, a little glass, that would just be a gulp. Whoa. So one of the most important factors in exercise for men or women, and for longevity and ensuring you're strong and you don't break any bones and you keep your bones strong, is weight training. And I don't want to get too big. You're not going to get too big. Nobody gets too big. You have to be a genetic freak to get too big. You don't get too big. I lift the heaviest weights I can possibly lift, and I can't get too big. So don't worry. You'll be okay. You won't get too big. It's a little pet peeve of mine. Since I'm such a misanthrope, I bought heavy dumbbells, and I have a home gym. But any way you can get, just ensure you're training every muscle group once a week, close or to failure. I get a lot of flack for this, but my secret that keeps me consistent forever, not forever, but you know what I mean, is 1 set per muscle group to failure once a week. Sometimes 2 depending on the muscle group. So I'll do dumbbell press and then incline and decline flies. And I'll do military press and then lateral raises, because sometimes one exercise doesn't hit all the muscles in that area properly. So I'll usually do pull-ups with straight pulls. And legs. Legs are the most important, especially for longevity. You want your legs as strong as possible. And the beauty of your legs is the bigger they are, the bigger your quads are and your hamstrings are. Those are especially your quads, those are your biggest muscles in your body. If you can get those larger, they're basically like carbohydrate sponges. If you want to keep the fat off, you want your quads to be a respectable size, because they will hold on to a lot of glycogen, and they will use the protein that you eat for protein synthesis to keep them strong. They will help your body use all those calories. And as I alluded to earlier with the marathon running, for long jogs and long runs, not to mention that I personally get injured doing that. It's terrible for my knees, and I can't stand it. Walking and or high intensity interval training, just something really intense, like running up and down the stairs as fast as you can. It doesn't even have to be intervals. Just do it until you're out of breath, and then go for a walk. Or just walk. If you don't feel like doing the high intensity stuff, just lift weights and walk. The lifting weights will take care of the high intensity stuff. But long, medium cardio is actually really bad for visceral fat, your internal fat, because it raises cortisol. If you ever seen like those marathon runners, they don't look like in great shape. Their muscles are quite emaciated. If you don't want to join a gym and you have workouts, want to do your workouts at home, a pull-up bar for your door frame is an essential in my book. It's great for stretching. You can stretch on it once a day and let your legs hang. It really decompresses your spine. And if you can't do pull-ups, you can get a band, but one thing I like more than a band for people who can't do them is do the negatives. So jump up to do your pull-up or chin-up, and then focus on the negative. Fight your way down back into position. That will get you stronger, and hopefully you'll be able to do pull-ups non-assisted. You won't have to jump anymore. Track your progress. But yes, I can't emphasize lifting enough, and we don't want to do it for vanity purposes. Not at all. But we want to be strong and capable of action if the Most High requires it from us. And yeah, there's nothing wrong. If you start to look good, there's nothing wrong with checking yourself in the mirror, if you have a significant other, getting a compliment from your wife. But you know what I mean by vanity, like the social media ridiculousness. Because even some artistic depictions of Jesus. He was pretty ripped. He was a carpenter. He kept his through his youth, he kept his muscles active. Peter too. You see some depictions of him, and he's got some pretty jacked arms and thick forearms, and because he was a fisherman. So yes, implement more healthy tactics if you require it, but do what you enjoy and still eat some things you enjoy. Like, who doesn't like meat and fruit? Like I said, you can get most of your nutrients from just meat and fruit. Obviously, organs are the most important part of the meat. But if, going back to supplements, if there probably is a supplement that actually is worth getting, which is basically a food anyhow, it would be like an organ supplement. Like, you can get beef liver if you hate liver. It can help fortify your diet that way. Unfortunately, it's ridiculously expensive. If you can eat the organs, more power to you. Like, for example, chicken hearts aren't that bad. Microplastics aside, the benefits of chicken hearts outweigh that for sure. But do what you enjoy. I enjoy walking. I love walking. Power walking. I get extremely invigorated. I like being able to... I do a standing punching jog as I kick my legs up and punch as hard as I can in a standing position, and that's my intensity interval. It gets my heart pumping and me breathing deeply. I do it basically to failure meaning you can't do it anymore. And I lift weights, and it's as simple as 1 or 2 sets to failure per muscle group. Lift heavy. If you're not grunting the last 2, or you're not making faces, record yourself. If you're not making faces, you're not training hard enough. Besides the walking, obviously. I'll emphasize again, start as easy and sustainable as possible, and add difficulty, time consumption wise, once you know you can manage the load. This stuff takes a lot of time, and if life happens, or you fall off and have a cheat meal, or you have to take a week off, that's fine. Get back on, do it again. Don't just give up hope. Know there's going to be bumps in the road. Know there's going to be roadblocks. Know you're going to have to take a break here and there, but stay at her as much as you can. Keep stress to a minimal, and don't stress yourself out worrying about that. And sleep. If I have a choice between more production in a day or getting more sleep, I'll always choose more sleep. Because good sleep will make you more productive long term. You'll get more done in the hours of the day that you are awake. I can't emphasize enough the restorative powers of sleep. I was talking about testosterone replacement earlier. Not getting enough sleep is like missing your natural shot of TRT that the Almighty Father supplies us with. Don't miss that shot of the natural stuff, because that is good for removing visceral fat and keeping your stress hormones down. And I talked about grazing and snacking between meals. I used to be guilty of this until my metabolism told me to stop. Don't snack in the middle of the night. The only time you can snack in the middle of the night is 1 day a week, and that's if you do a full body weight training workout that day. If you do a full body weight training workout, intensity to failure, that 1 day a week, that night, you can have a high protein snack in the middle of the night. Other than that 1 day, never. Unless you're hypoglycemic or something and you require sugar. Like, that goes without saying. I'm sure I forgot a gazillion things, because I can talk about this stuff all day. I stay on top of all the latest information, and you have to be really careful. You talk about controlled opposition and devils. There's a ton on TikTok. Be extremely careful who you follow and listen to in regards to diet and fitness advice. There are a lot of wolves in sheep's clothing.
A lot of protein supplements, but later I realized that they are not good for health. Even protein shakes are really bad.
Like, can you elaborate?
It takes 3 years to digest 1 scoop of protein shake, by the way. It stays in your body.
If you have anything to add, I love when people add valuable comments to my comment section. Please do, or just some kind words. And like the video, subscribe if you haven't, and may the Most High, Almighty Father in heaven, be with you in Jesus' mighty name, and may the Father's Holy Spirit protect you and guide you and keep you strong, and peace be with you.